Welcome back to our deep dive. Today we're opening up a file that, well, it creates a very specific kind of tension.
It really does.
Because usually, when we look at big systems, housing, logistics, healthcare, we're looking for where the gears are grinding. We look for the failures.
What, the glitches, the cracks in the pavement.
Exactly. The things that are obviously broken. But today we're continuing our journey through the AI Futures series by Jaffar Humayoon. And this specific entry, episode 4, argues something that feels completely counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It argues that our current crisis isn't happening because a system is failing. It's happening because a system is succeeding. Perfectly.
Yeah. It's a concept Humayoon calls the success paradox. And before we unravel that, I think we need to reset the room a bit.
Good idea.
Because we've been tracking the series for a few weeks, and the framing is vital. So as a reminder to everyone listening right now, AI Futures is not a forecast, it's a framework. This series explores how AI may unravel the systems we take for granted, not to alarm, but to challenge assumptions and spark deeper thinking about what comes next under maximum AI adoption.
I really appreciate that grounding. I mean, we aren't here to scream about the sky falling.
No.
We're here to look at the mechanics of the sky. And if you were with us for our last deep dive on episode 3, the cognitive inelasticity, you know the baseline we're working from.
Right. To briefly recap, because it really is the foundation for today, we established the difference between Tier 2 and Tier 3 thinking.
Tier 2 being rule following, executing a known process.
Like following a recipe, exactly. And Tier 3 is systems architecture, dealing with ambiguity, understanding the chemistry of the ingredients, and actually rewriting the recipe.
And the main takeaway from that previous discussion was that upskilling is a lot harder than we tend to assume. You can't just take a human mind that has been conditioned for, 20 years to follow rules and suddenly expect it to act like a systems architect just because the software changed.
Precisely. It's a cognitive leap, not a software patch. Which brings us directly to today's focus.
The education system.
The success paradox.
Yeah. When I first read the source material for this specific topic, I expected the usual complaints. Class sizes are too big, funding is too low, textbooks are outdated. But Humayoon isn't talking about any of that, is he?
Not at all. He's looking at the design specifications of the modern school. If you look at what the system was actually built to do in the 20th century, not what we wish it did, but what it was literally engineered to do, it is functioning at near 100% efficiency.
It's producing exactly the output it was designed to produce.
Right.
Which is
compliant, reliable labor.
Okay, let's unpack this industrial format, because the source material gets very visual here. It asks us to look at the physical and psychological architecture of a standard school. And when you strip away the nostalgia, it really does look like a factory floor.
It hasn't changed in a century. Think about the layout. Rows of desks facing a single source of truth at the front of the room. Bells ringing at precise intervals to signal a shift change. Standardized breaks.
Yeah.
This architecture wasn't accidental. It was a formatting process.
Formatting? That is such a deliberate word choice. It implies we're writing an operating system onto a blank drive.
In a functional sense, we were. This system was built for the industrial age. The economy back then didn't need creative chaos. It needed absolute precision. If you were working on an assembly line or in a massive bureaucratic filing room, you needed to sit still for 8 hours.
Right.
You needed to follow instructions exactly. You needed to replicate a process without deviation.
So the school system was essentially the driver installation for the workforce. It trained you to suppress the urge to wander off and explore, and instead rewarded you for sitting still and listening.
Correct. And we have to give credit where it's due. It was a massive success. This formatting created the modern middle class. It allowed millions of people to plug into the economy and function reliably. But, and here is the friction point, the source material argues we are moving from a world of linear instruction to a world of exponential inference.
Okay, those are big terms. Let's break that down for everyone, because I feel like that distinction is the technical heart of the argument. Linear instruction, that's the human method, right?
That is the human method. Think about how you learned mathematics. You started with arithmetic, then, maybe a year later, algebra. Then geometry.
Step by step.
It's a slow, cumulative process. You are installing a rule set into a brain, line by line, year by year. It takes almost 2 decades to get a fully formatted human ready for the market.
And exponential inference.
That's how AI operates. It doesn't just learn the rules, it infers the underlying patterns and optimizes them. And crucially, it doesn't take 12 years. It takes weeks, sometimes hours.
Wow.
So Humayun's argument is that we have a fundamental mismatch. We're using a linear method school to format students for an economy that is now governed by exponential systems.
It's like we're training marathon runners by teaching them to walk really, really efficiently, and they show up to the race, look over, and their opponent is a sports car.
A sports car that never sleeps, never gets tired, and upgrades its own engine while it's driving.
That brings us to the valuation of that compliance, because for a long time there was a deal, right? The social contract, I think everyone listening grew up with it, the old deal.
The deal was simple. Compliance equals stability.
If you memorize the facts, avoid mistakes, color inside the lines, and recite the official answer, you get the degree, you get the job.
And that used to be true. Following the manual used to be the floor for middle-class stability. If you could be compliant and reliable, you were safe. But Humayoon points out a critical value shift in the AI futures framework. In an age of autonomous intelligence, compliance is no longer an asset. It is a liability.
A liability? I mean, that sounds intense. Surely we still need people who follow rules. You don't want a chaotic pilot flying your plane.
You don't want them breaking safety protocols, no. But in terms of economic value creation, compliance is dead weight. Here's the logic. If a task can be perfectly described by a rule, it can be perfectly executed by a model.
I see where this is going. If I can write down the instructions for my job in a manual,
Then an AI can do it faster, cheaper, and without error. AI doesn't just follow rules, it tirelessly optimizes them. It doesn't get bored.
right?
It doesn't make calculation errors due to fatigue. So if your primary skill, the thing you spent 16 years perfecting in school, is your ability to follow instructions perfectly, you're competing against a system that does that at near zero cost.
So the student who spent their entire life mastering the art of getting the right answer has effectively optimized themselves for a market that doesn't exist anymore.
We're looking at avoided social contract. And I want to be clear here. Humayoon isn't saying the institutions maliciously tricked the students. It's not a conspiracy. It's a structural break. The cost of rule-based cognition, the exact kind of thinking we test for on standardized exams, is approaching zero.
That is, I mean, that's jarring for anyone currently holding a degree or paying tuition for one. The promise was always that a degree plus hard work equals stability. But that equation relied on the degree acting as a barrier to entry. It implied scarcity.
Exactly. A degree used to prove you had the discipline to be formatted. It was a signal to employers that this person can process linear instructions reliably, but now software does that processing, so the signal is jamming.
This leads perfectly into what the author calls the clock mismatch. I love this imagery in the source material because it really explains why the system feels so sluggish right now. Education moves like a glacier. AI moves like lightning.
It's an issue of institutional lag. Just think about the cycle time of a syllabus. Let's say a university wants to launch a new program today to address this AI shift. Walk through the mechanics of that with me.
Okay, so first you have committee meetings,
Right.
then formal proposals, debates among the faculty,
Academic Senate approval.
which takes months. Then you have to find the professors to teach it.
You have to print the textbooks or design the course materials.
And finally, you recruit the students. We're talking 2 years, minimum, probably 4.
And in those 4 years, the capabilities of the models have expanded exponentially. By the time the student sits in their first lecture, the textbook is already a historical artifact.
So the race is lost before the student even leaves the starting block.
It is. It's an incongruence of speed. The system simply cannot cycle fast enough to match the rate of machine learning. And again, this isn't about teachers not trying hard enough. It's about the physics of a bureaucratic institution going up against the physics of digital acceleration.
So naturally, people panic. Systems panic. And we see what Humayoon defines as delay theater.
Delay theater, it's a biting term, isn't it?
It is, but I look around and I see it everywhere. Coding for everyone. Prompt engineering 101. It feels like we're doing something, but are we really?
These are superficial patches. They aren't architectural shifts. Let's look at the Teach Everyone to Code movement. On the surface, it makes sense. Coding is the language of the future.
That's what I've been told for 15 years. Learn to code, ensure your stability.
But often the way we teach coding in schools is just teaching a student a different syntax for a rule set. If you're teaching Python the same way you taught Latin, as a set of vocabulary and grammar rules to be memorized and executed, you are still training for compliance. You're just changing the language of the compliance.
And the irony is, AI is remarkably good at writing code.
Because code is rule-based. It's the ultimate playground for Tier 2 thinking. And then there's the prompt engineering craze. There's this belief that if we just teach kids how to talk to the model, they'll be fine.
Yeah, you see this online every day. The top 10 prompts you need to know.
But prompt engineering is likely a transitional skill. As the models get better at intent reasoning, understanding what you actually want rather than
Okay.
just what you specifically said, they won't need complex magical prompts. So we are building an entire curriculum around a temporary interface limitation.
A limitation that will probably be patched out in the next version.
Exactly.
So if we are supposed to teach them to code or write prompts, what is the actual hedge here? What is the defense against obsolescence?
Deep strategic thinking, tier 3 cognition, curiosity,
Yeah.
the ability to handle ambiguity. But here we run into the install fallacy.
The install fallacy, meaning the idea that you can just download critical thinking into a brain.
Right. We treat education like software installation. Oh, the world changed. Okay, let's just install the innovation module in the fall semester. But strategic thinking isn't an app, it's a trait. It's shaped by childhood stability, exposure to complex problems, and long-term environments where there isn't a single right answer.
And the formatting process of the last 100 years actively discouraged those exact traits.
It penalized them. If you colored outside the lines, or solved the math problem a different way, or asked why too many times, you were often viewed as a disruption. You were corrected. So now we have a workforce that was trained for 18 years to never question the system, suddenly being told, okay, the system is automated, please go invent a new one.
It's an impossible pivot. You can't just flip a switch in a 22-year-old's brain after 2 decades of conditioning.
No, you can't. And that brings us to the identity fracture. We aren't just talking about economics here. We are talking about a psychological crisis for the model student.
I think this is the part that hits the hardest. Imagine the kid who did everything right, sat in the front row, perfect GPA. They built their entire self-worth around being good at school.
They built their identity around their ability to navigate a highly structured system, and now they step into the real world and they find that their skills are non-transferable. The things that made them special in the classroom, perfect recall, diligent execution, unwavering compliance, are the exact things the AI does instantly.
That has to be devastating. It's like training your whole life to be a knight, mastering the sword, learning the code of chivalry, and then arriving on a battlefield and realizing everyone else has drones.
And your sword is just a heavy piece of metal.
Yeah. And this is where the system's reaction becomes, well, defensive.
Yeah.
Humayoon talks about the incentive to deflect.
Look, no large system admits foundational obsolescence easily. It's existential for them. So instead of the university saying, you know, our curriculum is mismatched for this century, the narrative shifts to the individual.
They say, you just didn't adapt fast enough.
Exactly. You picked the wrong major, you need to hustle more, you should have networked better. It reframes a structural mismatch as a personal failure of effort.
It completely masks the systemic failure.
It does. Humayoon writes that these students weren't lazy. They were just following a roadmap that was outdated before they even started walking.
Which creates a serious divide, doesn't it? The adaptive gap. Because not everyone plays by the rules.
Right. We are seeing a widening divide. On one side, you have the formatted students, the rule followers who are stuck. On the other side, you have individuals who often had early exposure to complexity. Maybe they came from backgrounds where they could afford to take risks, or they went to alternative schools that valued inquiry over rote memorization.
The kids who are allowed to fail.
The kids who were encouraged to break things, who were comfortable with chaos. That is the ultimate currency in an AI world, the capacity for unstructured exploration. If you panic when there's no manual, you're in trouble. If you thrive when there's no manual, you have a massive advantage.
It really reframes the whole privilege conversation. It's not just about financial resources anymore. It's about the privilege of escaping the factory formatting.
It is the privilege of retaining your Tier 3 thinking capability while the system tries to standardize it out of you.
So where does this leave us? We've got a system running perfectly to produce obsolete outcomes, a timeline that can't keep up with technological acceleration, and a generation experiencing an identity crisis because they were trained for a reality that no longer exists.
We have to recognize this for what it is, a crisis of obsolescence. It is not that schools are failing in the sense that the teachers don't care or the plumbing is leaking. It's that the blueprint itself refers to a building that no longer serves an economic purpose.
The source material sums this up beautifully. If the goal of education remains the production of standardized output, then the relevance of the degree will continue to diminish relative to autonomous alternatives.
That is the crux of it. If we continue to view education as the transfer of static knowledge, Here is the fact. Memorize the fact. We are setting students up for an incongruence they can't overcome.
So we need to stop asking how we get students to pass the test.
And start asking what a human can do that a model cannot.
It comes down to a provocative choice for all of us, really. Are we sending the next generation to rehearse compliance or to awaken the creativity required to govern the machines?
Because if we don't awaken that creativity, we're just creating supervisors for a process that already runs itself.
And that is a job description with a very short shelf life.
Very short indeed.
This has been, well, heavy. It challenges the very foundation of how we prepare for life. But that's exactly why we do these deep dives, to look at the systems we take for granted.
And we aren't done yet.
No, we aren't. We've looked at the mind in cognitive inelasticity, and now we've looked at the school in the success paradox. But next time, we are zooming out to the global population.
Episode 5, Demographic Disaster.
Here is the teaser for you. We just talked about all these students entering a market for which they were never prepared. But what happens when billions of young minds enter that market at the exact same moment the global demographic balance shifts towards an aging population?
We're going to look at the collision of obsolete training and an inverted population pyramid. It is where the economic rubber truly meets the road.
I have a feeling that discussion is going to be even more intense. But for now, take a look at the formatting around you. The rows, the bells, the rules. Ask yourself, are they serving you or are they just formatting you? Stay tuned.
Stay curious.
Stay systemic.